Ashley, and this is Let's Talk Dispatch.
I do. You're gonna do it really well.
And I believe the world needs more dispatchers.
Around in the mud, blood, and
Plus
beer.
years that I'm not working 4th of July. 4th of July.
And community policing, right? What about community dispatching?
So on this show, with the help of my guests, we will educate, empower, and support the heroes behind the headset.
Right.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode here on Let's Talk Dispatch with me, Ashley, the raspy dispatcher. As you can see, my office is evolving. We've moved all the merchandise stuff into here as well. So this office is now fully committed to the raspy dispatcher. So shout out to my fiance, Claudia, for packing all the orders, making all the stickers here in-house. You are really appreciated. It really takes a load off my plate. So thank you so much. We did just release our first challenge coin, the Raspy Dispatcher, because the world needs more dispatchers. If you haven't had a chance to grab one, head to theraspydispatcher.com. Once they are gone, they are gone. We're not going to be making more of the same coin, so definitely grab it while you can. And of course, check out all the other merch we got in there. We got some new hats, a new bag, some drinkware. So definitely a lot of stuff to gear up heading into the holidays for your favorite dispatcher. Again, theraspydispatcher.com. Go ahead and check that out. So my guest today was a New York Fire Department alarm dispatcher from 1973 to 1982, working out of Brooklyn, which they were proud to claim as the busiest fire alarm station in the world. They have since took to writing as an author, writing novels and short stories about the FDNY dispatchers in 1970. My guest today, everybody, Francis Holt. Hi, Francis.
Hi, Ashley. How you doing?
I am doing well. Yourself?
Very good, thanks.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for reaching out and being willing to come on. I know you emailed me letting me know about your short stories that you're putting out about dispatchers in the 1970s, and tell us a little bit about how you got into public safety.
Well, if you're the raspy dispatcher, I'm the accidental dispatcher because I didn't know such a thing existed as a fire alarm dispatcher. I really didn't. And I had a part-time job as a weekend telephone operator in a big hospital in Brooklyn. And some of the folks that I was working with were off-duty police officers and firefighters. And one thing led to another. And one of the firefighters said to me, if you'd like, I can put a word in for you. They're looking to fill some what they called provisional slots. That means they didn't have enough openings to mount a civil service test, but they could hire some people until they did. And so I said, what's the pay? And it was a lot more than I was making. and suddenly I was interested. So I really had no idea. I mean, my grandfather was a New York City cop, but that's as far as my public safety interest had gone. And, I got there coming in as a provisional. You don't come in with a class, so wasn't a lot of training. There was no certification. And so you had to keep your eyes and ears open and your mouth shut and learn what was going on. So.
What was that like in the beginning for you? I would imagine it was probably really stressful with the limited training and the not being able to open your mouth as a dispatcher. No, just kidding.
Well, no. First of all, I'm a guy who likes to open his mouth. Second of all, I got thrown into a schedule of 2 days, 2 evenings, and 2 nights with 96 hours off and do it again, which boy, that was kind of interesting. And so I actually didn't take a phone call, I don't think, for about 6 weeks. And it was kind of a stunning, overwhelming wave of noise and information. You sat in this big room with a huge high ceiling and fire alarm circuits coming in on both sides of the room, and they were telegraph circuit, so they'd be tapping in on both sides. The phones would be ringing constantly.
Mm.
Radio would be going. There was a voice alarm system that connected to all the firehouses, and everybody there knew what they were doing except me. And there was all this back and forth. It was like a foreign language, all these numbers,
Mhm.
and engines and trucks, and it took me a while because it's a different world. It's a completely different world, and you have to be both fast and accurate, and you feel that pressure from the first day you walk in.
Mm.
They're not gonna. So you sit and watch for a little while, then they move you to paperwork, which familiarizes you with the codes and all that stuff. You do paperwork for a few weeks, and then maybe at 4 o'clock in the morning or something, you might be able to take a phone call and see what's going on. With somebody paying very much attention to what you're doing. So it just kind of took over my life for a while because if you were going to be successful, you really had to pay attention.
No.
So yeah, it was kind of stunning. I'd say I was stunned for a long period of time.
The stunned dispatcher.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, when you were, getting in there, you guys didn't have like a CAD system like we have today, I imagine, right? So, what's that?
It had to be up here. I worked with guys who just scared the crap out of me because they knew so much, and I
Wow.
didn't think I was ever going to learn as much as they did. They'd hear a box come in. They knew where it was before somebody pulled the assignment card. They knew who went. They knew if the companies who went were available on the air, and they'd start calling them on the radio immediately. They'd know what the occupancies were at the corner.
Mm,
And I'm talking about a city of 4 million people, Brooklyn,
yeah.
just Brooklyn. These guys were amazing. They were very, very good at what they did. And
Mhm.
if I got to be half as good as they were, I'd be a good dispatcher. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah.
And I have very limited knowledge about fire dispatching today for even compared to back then. Um, I guess my question is when our fire alarms do go off, we get some type of notification. We're and I think for us, like burglary alarms, it comes from the company that holds whatever for the folks who have that alarm going off. Is that kind of how the setup was back then as well with fire alarms? The fire alarm would go off and then like a third party would call it into you guys? Or what did that look like for you back then?
So we had a number of ways of things coming in. So if somebody pulled the handle on the street box, that activated a wheel which started tapping out a numerical location,
Mm,
and it was a direct current line from every other corner in Brooklyn into the central office near Prospect Park. All of the central offices were located in big city parks.
mm,
Um, for a lot of reasons, safety is a big one. Defensible perimeters,
mm,
no exposures that are going to interfere with your operation. So they would come in directly from a pulled box. Uh, People dialing 911 would go to police communications, and they would press an add-on button, and that would ring where we were.
mm,
People could call the operator to report a fire, and
mm.
that would come in on a second set of phone banks.
Wow.
And there were there were class 3 alarms. So Acme Fire Alarm, Wells Fargo, any of those building services, the alarm would go from the building to them, and they would call us on another set of phones. So, and then the only other way you could get it is if somebody walked into a firehouse or stopped a rig on the street and said, "Hey, there's a fire down the street here," and that would happen, often.
Yeah.
Not every day, but fairly often. So
Yeah.
that was a verbal alarm. So you had a phone alarm, a box alarm, a verbal alarm, and a class 3 alarm.
Awesome.
And that's how they came in. And all 911 alarms were phone alarms. So,
Very interesting. Well, do you remember any of your like first call for service, early calls in your career?
I thought about that question, and I'm lucky I can remember anything from 1973 to 1974. That's really no, I don't remember any particular alarm. I do remember because that was part of what they called the war years
Mm.
in FDNY. And what I do remember was that it was so amazingly busy. There was so much stuff going on, and these guys that said nobody was excited. Everybody was extremely calm, and you learned that was one way or another. You learned that was the only way you could function.
Mm.
So it was stunning. But no, I didn't remember any particular thing. The only I looked at that question. The only thing I remember is once when I was on the radio. So I was the radio dispatcher for Brooklyn. And there's all kinds of units in the street trying to get your attention. And there was a third alarm in a church. And the ticket came over from the alarm receiving side to the radio. I picked it up and I looked at it. And it said, fire reported to be in the church. And somebody wrote, holy smoke on the ticket. Dispatcher humor. And at that time, it had gone to a third alarm. And, but it was really the only big fire we had working. And the chief that was in charge came on and said, transmit a fifth alarm for this box.
Oh, wow.
They'd never gone from 3 to 5. And I didn't want to say, are you sure you mean 5?
Yeah.
Because he was the chief.
Yeah.
But I said, yes, we'll transmit a fourth, then a fifth. And he said, 10-4. And that was the only time I'd ever seen anything like that. And,
wow.
That's the only one I remember. There was a lot. There was
Yeah.
a lot of stuff.
Yeah, it's the holy smokes for me. I imagine that would be something I try to work into my cat call. Like,
Oh man!
how can I get
in one of our slower boroughs, I won't say which one. I'll give you a hint. It's an island. In one of the slower boroughs, there was a fire reported in an Arthur Treach's Fish and Chips, and in the background they sang the song from the commercial when they announced the
the small victories in dispatch, I tell you. That's amazing. Well, what do you think is different and yet the same about dispatching now versus when you were dispatching?
Well, one of the post I did in LinkedIn a couple of months ago was talking about what was the same. And I think the one thing that's the same, and it probably always will be the same, is the intensity of this one-on-one connection with a complete stranger who's perhaps reporting a fire someplace else, or perhaps is in the fire. And that's there's a lot hanging in the balance on that conversation. And sometimes, you can't hear them because of the noise of their environment, or they have an accent that you're not familiar with. Although I will say, growing up in Brooklyn, I knew a lot of accents and I knew how to swear in 5 or 6 languages. So, accents generally weren't a problem. But sometimes, you had all of these challenges coming in at the same time, and the conversation might last 20 seconds because they couldn't stay on the phone with you. Maybe 20 seconds. Sometimes you're on the phone with somebody until somebody got there to help them. But the intensity of that one-to-one connection, I think people are better trained now. So that's one of the things I'd say was different. When I got finished with the fire department, I worked for a training company.
Oh, yeah.
And traveled around the country for, I don't know, a year and a half, 2 years, training dispatches. And so the people are now better able to focus their communication, elicit the kind of critical information you need to give to the responding units and to assess what you need to send. But at that time, we used to just answer the phone. What's the address of the fire? And a lot of people, looking back on it, I don't think that was the most efficient way to answer the phone because a lot of people weren't prepared for that question.
Yeah.
But the training is one of the big differences in technology. I did a LinkedIn piece I don't know, maybe a month ago. It says, "Imagine you're a dispatcher in 1973," and it got a lot of hits. And I heard from different people in different channels about it. And you know, the things that are so different now. For example, typically you know where your caller is, and if you don't know where they are, you know their phone number. Typically, you know? We had no automatic number identification, automatic location identification. We didn't have any of that.
And I've said so many times, like, I don't know if I could have done this job back in the day. And I'm sure that's just because I've grown up with the tech and all that nonsense. But like, this job was like extra, in my mind, hard because you did have to rely on that brain of yours and your
Yeah.
ability to navigate with map books and handwritten notes, and my handwriting is atrocious, so I wouldn't get the job just based on that. They would like, go be a doctor, you can't read this. So I've said many a times that technology for me um makes the job quote unquote easier, and it's hard for me to imagine doing this job without all those nuances that technology provides me.
Well, I'll tell you, while I was there, they started to prepare for computer-assisted dispatch, and the first generation of it came in while I was still working there. But what was interesting was the preparation period, because all the people who were going to bid on the system would come in and visit and try and quantify what it was we were doing. And I can remember sitting on the radio, and it's a little engineer guy sitting off to my left. I remember this guy. He was a very nice man. And a box came in, and I was counting it in my head as it was coming in. And I got on, keyed the radio, and I asked for a ladder company to respond to the box. And he had a stopwatch, and he was trying to, time all the components of this process. And he said, "How did you?" And I said, "Later." Right now. And a couple of the companies that came in to try and bid on that decided it wasn't something that they could do. The system that they got was pretty good. I do remember dispatchers worrying, because typically we would have 7 or 8 dispatchers on duty, and they would worry about, well, the computer's going to take over my job. And not actually, it was quite the opposite. We needed more people. Because a computer does one thing at a time, does it really well. The big thing that came out of computer-aided dispatch, as far as we were concerned, was that it produced more management reports, and it really quantified. I mean, we knew we were busy, but there was a little thing down on the bottom of your screen in the right-hand corner that showed how many alarms an hour you were doing.
Oh, wow.
And it's like, holy crap, we're really busy.
The glass ceiling has been broken, and you're just like, oh no. Now they know. Now they know.
Yeah. Well, and people started to feel worse then.
Yeah.
I should be making more money, and what's this? And they were right. They should be making more money.
Well, it's funny that you bring up the fact that that you were there when they first implemented this CAD system, and the idea of someone coming from the outside the tech world and trying to create a program that really allows dispatchers to do this all-encompassing work. The idea that someone had to go in there and figure out, how does this translate into technology? Because I mean, now there's 30, 40 CAD companies, probably more than that. But there's so many different types of CAD companies, so many different ways that they've created technology to try to streamline our processes. And it's just really astonishing to think that someone at some point had to have someone sit with the dispatcher and really figure out what the heck it is that they're doing, and how do we translate this language into code and then have that code be something functional that the dispatcher isn't going to lose their mind using, on the job.
And I think they were working with, in terms of computer capacity,
Mhm.
I think they were working with the equivalent of the Wright brothers airplane. I mean, it was really early days,
Mhm.
and I had a lot of respect for these guys because they did come up with a system that worked most of the time, and that was not an easy thing to do. Now they got better as computing capacity grew, but boy, at the beginning it was really. And I did get a chance to explain to the guy afterwards. I said, "Look, don't interrupt me in the middle of an alarm. We'll slow things down, and we can't have that." But this is what happened. I knew this guy was still up, meaning available by radio,
Mhm.
uh, because he came back from this false alarm over here, and he didn't have time to get back to his house over here. And this other box came in, and I know he was first due on that box, and so I just called him and got him rolling in that direction. And he
Mhm.
said, "You did all of that like that?" I said, "Well, yeah, yeah, yeah." I mean, and there were guys that were a lot better than me
Yeah.
doing that because there were so many companies
Mm.
in so many neighborhoods, and they knew them. They knew them, and they knew where they went, and they knew who. Not only did they know who went to what box, they knew who was first due and second due and third due. Fascinating people, and did the job really well.
Awesome. Well, you have been writing and putting out stories about the wonderful dispatchers back then. So let's talk about your new book, Brooklyn Fire. And that is coming out on November 1st. Oh, look at that. Yeah. Let's talk about that and
And
what that's
Brooklyn,
about, your
if
inspiration,
I
and
can
all
get
that
it
good
in front
stuff.
of the. This is a proof copy, and you see. I don't know if you can see it. There's a burning church on the cover,
Oh, okay.
and so it's
Holy
Brooklyn.
smokes.
Yes, right. You learn fast. You
Yes.
could have worked in Brooklyn 50 years ago. Sure, you could. Brooklyn Hellfire is the name of it. It's the third in a series called Guardians of Brooklyn,
Mm.
and it's I really have fun writing them. So it's kind of I hope people have as much fun reading them as I have writing them. And I knew you were going to ask me what about the book, so I'm just going to read you from the promo.
Awesome. I like it.
What's up in Brooklyn Hellfire? Let's just say it has fires, rescues, explosions, and a shootout mixed in with scandal in the Catholic Church, bookmaking, loan sharks, city politics, unsettled scores, union politics, and of course, families, all kinds of families. And so, yeah, that's what's in the
I
book.
feel like I've never heard a more New York description of of a book. That sounds awesome.
And and I can actually talk like New York too, if I had to.
It is one of my favorites, I'm not gonna lie. I just did
Yeah,
a post
yeah.
class, and we had a guy from New York who worked for PD, back then, and he had the accent, and I was like, "This is wonderful. I could sit here all day." So where can folks pick up the book when it is,
Well,
released?
it's going to be available. Actually, my books are all through Amazon.
Mhm.
Um, I had written a textbook 100 years ago. It's probably in the Smithsonian by now because it was pre-computer assisted dispatch.
Mm.
That was through Penwell Publishing, and I don't know where you can get one of them. You'd have to get it secondhand. But the novels and the short stories are all through Amazon. The Brooklyn Hellfire Kindle book, the ebook, is available for pre-order now at Amazon, and it is really. I can't bring myself to say it drops on November 1st. I just anytime somebody says something drops, I'm looking to pick it up. It's just
And then when I go down to get it, I might not come back up, it's a
yeah.
risk. It's a risk either way.
And it'll be available in both the ebook, which is the Kindle, and if you don't have a Kindle, you can still have a Kindle reader on your laptop or um,
True. Mhm.
whatever device you're using, and it'll be available in the ebook and in paperback. And I've started writing the next installment already.
Awesome. Very, very cool. It's definitely we're getting to a place where dispatchers, excuse me, are being more represented in,
Yes.
media as in TV. We're being mentioned on shows. There's a dispatch, like a live PD dispatch version, we're definitely starting to be recognized more for the masses to be able to see. So hearing that we have, folks writing books like stories about, what the dispatchers like in this era with these things happening around is really fun and is really awesome.
I did write a guide for writing your memoirs, your fire service EMS memoirs.
Mm,
And one of the things I put in the guide was I did some market research, and there's a few memoirs, for firefighters, maybe 300 or 400 memoirs, and there's over 1 million firefighters in the country.
mm,
And then there's a few for police, and of course there's novels for police all over the place. But there's a
mm,
few for fire. Then I tried to get to dispatcher memoirs, and I think the number was 68,000 dispatchers in the country, and there were
mm.
4 memoirs.
Wow.
And I said, there's a good market for you if you want to do something. And I looked for dispatcher fiction, and I couldn't find any that was, just purely dispatcher fiction.
Yeah.
And so that's the only thing they say, write what you know. I know that.
Yeah.
And so, I started doing it during the pandemic, and I decided to keep doing it. It's a lot of fun.
Oh, very cool. And I mean, it needs to be done because that's where we kind of first find things and people that we want to aspire to be, right? In the movies and shows that we
Yes.
watch, in the books we read, especially when we're younger. I think the more um exposure we give folks to the work we're doing and the work that we have done, the more of an understanding they're going to have if they ever have to call for help, as well as when we're 18 years old trying to figure out what we want to do with our lives, and that changes every 2 minutes. Maybe dispatch will be a thought, and that's really what we're hoping for.
Yeah, I did a post this week about dispatcher added safety, and a lot of that is something that hasn't changed. Also, but nobody knew about it.
Hmm.
Nobody knew how much safety dispatchers added to responding field forces.
Mhm.
Pre-arrival instructions weren't really part of the situation until about 25 years ago.
Mhm.
But dispatcher added safety is a big deal. And in the post, I said that maybe it was in response to the Halcyon's post. But anyway, I said something to the effect of, that there was an article. I think it might have been an APCO journal, but it might have been something else. The name of it was The Hidden Professionals, and it was about dispatchers. And you're right, the dispatchers are hidden no more. Now, part of the reason they're hidden no more is that the kind of media view that comes from television shows, also from this podcast.
Mm.
I saw you had 14,000 viewers.
Yeah, getting up there.
That's very good.
Mhm.
And part of it, for better or worse, came from litigation,
Mm.
where
Mhm.
people watched Rescue 911 or whatever it was that featured dispatching, and they lived in a jurisdiction that didn't have pre-arrival instructions. They
Mhm.
called up, somebody was having a cardiac or whatever, and they didn't get any pre-arrival instructions. They had to wait until the ambulance got there,
Mhm.
and when there was a bad outcome, they sued. And the whole standard would be what do 12 reasonable people think would be the standard of care. And if those 12 reasonable people were watching television,
Mhm.
the standard of care was, well, you should tell them what to do until somebody gets there.
Yeah.
So there were some unfortunate events that resulted in some litigation
Mhm.
that also resulted in some changes. There's a lot of positive changes that come out of really unfortunate things, like the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire or the Coconut Grove Fire, which
Mhm.
changed building codes and changed the need for exit doors. And so it was the same thing with dispatchers. Nobody knew who they were until they absolutely needed them to perform at a higher level. and they do now. Just about everywhere in the country. I haven't found a place where they don't anymore, and that is a comparative asset that most communities are just beginning to value, just beginning to understand. Because, like you said, you call and you're in trouble. You're not going to call Ghostbusters. Who are you going to call?
Oh no, they might in New York, you know. But it is so true. It's like we provide this certain level of care that people don't really have an understanding until they're really impacted by it, right?
Right,
It's
right.
like you don't realize how essential the folks who are on the phone with you until the units who are going to the call arrive, until you're there having to, you know, provide CPR, never given CPR, or, you know, trying to help your kid choking or whatever the thing is. You don't realize, I think, as a regular everyday individual, the need for those folks until you need them.
Yeah, yeah. It's a lot like smoke detectors, you know. Um, I don't know, smoke detector. What do I need that for? You know, my house has never burned down, and
Right.
and it's the whole idea of why why public safety services exist. You know, it's for the individual. No matter how many alarms we were doing per night, you know, each one of them was something for an individual, and for the individual, typically it's a low frequency, high consequence event.
Mm.
And so this is a big damn deal for them. And for you, it's like, oh, another phone call. Oh, gee, press the button. And so part of the challenge for supervisors was to keep everybody kind of up and saying, hey, you're doing a great job saving lives, you know.
Yeah.
But it is something that people don't realize. That sometimes even cities, towns, municipalities don't want to invest in the systems for this because they say, well, how often does that happen? And, you know, what's the pilots saying? One midair collision can ruin your whole day. You know, how often does it happen?
Yeah.
Well, it only has to happen once, and you don't forget it.
Yeah.
So,
And I would say that, I mean, I don't know, I'm out here in California, and I feel like fires in general have become more commonplace and
mm,
more of a topic of concern. And would you say comparatively, like back when you were working with fires, um, was there is there more of an awareness for the impact of fires and the frequency of fires now versus when you were dealing with fires, you know, as your regular everyday job?
yeah, I think that it's kind of hard to deny if you're sitting in New York and you wake up and the sky is yellow and brown and you say, "What's that?" You know, well, it's smoke from California, from Canada, from wherever. That there's an environmental impact that's impossible to deny. Um, the other thing I'll say about California, I did some training out there in Coronado, and they were so far ahead of East Coast operations in terms of incident command.
Mm,
So it's kind of interesting to me to see how things developed in different parts of the country. And one of the reasons they were very much ahead, way ahead in incident command,
mm,
was because of wildfires and the number of units spread out over a large area.
mhm,
And now incident command is being used in, you know, a building fire on the corner, and for good reason. And to keep
mm,
track of everybody is really important.
yeah.
Uh, but yeah, it's not something a rational person could deny if they can observe their environment.
Mhm,
It's
mhm,
there, and out west, I lived out west for a while. I lived in western Colorado,
mhm,
almost in Utah, and out west, the declining availability of water is scary as hell.
mhm, mhm, mhm,
Um, you know, it's really concerning, and
mhm,
people haven't gotten to the point yet where they're where they're doing legislative mandates for xeriscaping instead of green lawns and that sort of stuff. But it's real. Lake Powell is like way down below where it used to be, and so I think that if people don't pay attention, that could get a whole lot worse.
Totally. Well, Francis, as we wrap it up here, I'm going to ask you the question that I ask everyone who comes onto my show, which is what advice?
No, I cannot give you $20. I'm sorry.
That's for after. We're
Oh,
recording now, Francis. He didn't mean that. What advice would you give someone who is considering a career in dispatch?
It's extremely rewarding personally. It can be devastating emotionally sometimes, which is why dispatchers should be included in the stress debriefing that follow a critical incident. It can be kind of devastating, but it can be very rewarding, not only for the good that you do for people when they have a time of need, but also for the relationships you build with the people with whom you work. They're some of the best people around that working next to you or that you're talking to on the phone or the radio. They're good people. They're good people to know. Good people having your corner. That said, I would say shop around because the salaries vary dramatically from place to place, and they don't always vary with the cost of living in the place in which the PSAP is located. So, if you plan to, make your monthly expenses on a second job, or overtime, or writing books, that's not going to work. So, I think it's a great job for a lot of reasons. I think it's getting better financially. I think the certification programs help that. I think the training helps that. But that would be the one drawback, I think. And then the only other thing I'd say is, check the schedules. See what kind of schedules they work, because they have, in some places, the schedule can drive you completely off your rocker, to use a technical term. But if I had been getting paid what I make as a registered nurse, I probably would have still been doing it. But I had young children, and I went to nursing school at Bellevue through a fire and police department sponsored program, and once I got out of nursing school, it was kind of like, well, how best to spend my time? You only have so many hours in your life. So unless I win the lottery, what's going to be the best thing for me and my kids and my wife and all that stuff. The older you get, the more important your economic questions are. It's and then the other question is benefits. I know people who stayed and in New York stayed so they could get the pension. Because it's nice to have a pension at an earlier age than usual. But they almost all worked second jobs just to kind of either live in New York City or live nearby and commute to New York City, which are expensive propositions, both of them. So, but other than the money piece, I think it's a tough job to beat. It's not boring. It's exciting. When you come into work, it's a different thing every day, and people need you. And that can be a burden, but boy, it can be pretty good if you deliver for them. So
awesome. I love that. Definitely shop around. I'm a big fan of, it's not just the department who's looking for you, you're looking for them. So definitely shop around. I love that. Francis, again, thank you so much for joining me today, and everyone listening. Again, Brooklyn Hellfire comes out on November 1st, but if you can't wait, and you shouldn't wait, you can head over to Amazon, just search Francis X. Holt, and you can see all the rest of the books they have put out and grab one of those while you're waiting for November 1st to hit. So is there anywhere else anyone can connect with you? I know you're
No,
on
no.
LinkedIn.
Thank you very much for the promo for the books. I appreciate it. And on LinkedIn, yeah, I mean, anybody who's looking for me, I'm readily available, and I post routinely, and I also publish articles routinely. So
Awesome. Well, Francis,
yes,
again, thank you so much. I truly appreciate it, and I've really learned a lot today. Thank you.
thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, be right back with you.
Okay.
All right, everybody. That was another amazing episode here on Let's Talk Dispatch. Francis, again, thank you so much for your service and writing these books and really promoting the reality that we're here. Dispatchers do exist, and we do have a tremendous impact on the communities that we serve. Make sure, if you're a reader, to check out Brooklyn Hellfire, as well as the other books that Francis has put out. Again, it's on Amazon, and we all know we have that app downloaded, so there's no reason not to go check it out. Of course, like, subscribe, tell a friend, check out the raspydispatcher.com, and we'll see you next time. Stay raspy, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Let's Talk Dispatch, a Raspy Dispatcher production. If you like the podcast, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, leave a 5-star review, and of course, tell a friend. If you want to be a guest, head to the raspydispatcher.com and check out our additional resources. Until next time, stay raspy, everybody.